Hello, you articles out there, how you doing? Part two. Hope you're okay. Just waiting for Kent to join us. And here he is, Kent from Belfast in Northern Ireland. Women love him, men want to be him. How you doing, Kent? How you doing, pal? All right. Tell us. You all right there?
All right, Russell.
So, looking at it from outside, do you think there's an agenda with Talksport and Queensberry against Eddie Hills? Because Eddie Hills, I'm not a big fan of his, don't you? But he gets dug out on there on a daily basis, doesn't he? But it looks like it's a loving, doesn't it? It's like a lick feast with them lot. What do you think, Ken?
I don't really think so. I just think Eddie Hearn doesn't help himself in any way, shape, or form. He doesn't. You go back to last year with Conor Bain failing them two drug tests. They're saying that it was a propaganda campaign against Matchroom and Conor Bain. It was probably the biggest sporting story in the UK that year. Whether it was good or bad, it was a massive story.
Yeah.
They talked about why is it Connor? Why is he getting this energy? Well, Eddie Hills was saying before the Conor Bain Chris Eubank fight, this is the biggest fight in British history. It's going to make a massive gate, and it's going to have the biggest pay-per-view audience ever in a British fight. So if the fight is that big, okay, why wouldn't one of the fighters get that media attention and media scrutiny for failing two steroid tests?
I don't know. It's a whodunit, isn't it?
So they didn't help themselves. We all know what happened the week of the fight, after the fight. The way that all the appealing and all the language and all the crap about the dossier, the 200-page, this and that, and I think it's just turned fans against Matchroom. And I think the media, it's not that the media have turned on them, they're just asking the questions they should be asking. So does Talksport have an agenda against Matchroom? Personally, I don't think so.
Well, I think it's not being evened out, the criticism. I think that I call him Judge Jordan now. Judge Jordan, because he's like the big head honcho at Talksport, isn't he, really? He's like the flagship guy in it to go to. He's the guy that's got the most money and the most respect. He's the guy that they all gravitate to, isn't he? Am I right?
Money? Did he not bankrupt Crystal Palace?
I don't. He did all right out of it himself. Listen, he made over 100 million, didn't he, plugging mobile phones? He didn't put the lot into Crystal Palace. He's not that stupid. I mean, he lives in some mega gaff down there. He's running around with a 25 grand Hublot watch on his wrist. So he's not on Skid Row, is he?
It's everyone's saying that, yeah, and Simon Jordan's the go-to guy in boxing and all. Simon Jordan's never probably been in an amateur show in his life. He reminds me of Gordon Ramsay in the 90s.
Gordon Ramsay, I was just about to say that, was sat ringside with VIP free tickets.
It's like Rod Stewart. Rod Stewart's only a Celtic fan when they're playing in the Champions League or playing in an old firm. How invested are these people? Boxing, Russell, boxing right now has made Simon Jordan relevant again.
Yeah, it has. You know what? I look forward to his spats with Eddie Hills, but I think Eddie's trounced him 2-0 already, hasn't he, really?
I think you're right. I think the last time he got the better of him, he was sharp. You could see he was ready for him. He was sharp, and he turned him inside out at some stage, and he couldn't let go for days and days and days afterwards. You could see that it was, eating away at him, but he still couldn't. I thought Eddie done well that day. I watched the whole thing, and it was like scoring a fight. So I give it to Eddie on that one.
Yeah. Where do you see Jug Ears now? Does he keep his job at Talksport? Because he's in bed with everybody. Now, you saw the Talksport thing, didn't you? Where he's just agreeing with everything that they were saying, and he's sided with them. Why can't he come out and speak as an ex-fighter instead of siding with people? Paul Smith, Liam Smith, Jamie Moore, Carl Froch, Tony Bellew, Barry Jones all came out. 2 seconds, go back to the delivery here. It's that helmet, Ben. I think reversing up that recovery wagon. Where were I then? Oh, we're on about then. Oh, the people that are saying that it were a low blow. Paul Smith, Liam Smith, Jamie Moore, Barry Jones, Tony Bellew, Carl Froch, Teddy Atlas, and there's more, isn't there? He's come out and been critical about people who saying it wasn't a low blow. He's saying it's on solar plexus. Ken, now you're an ex-boxer. Is he right?
I thought it was a low blow.
Yeah.
In every way, shape, or form. But you look at the stills. The glove doesn't land in any of his tummy. Over the protector and the shorts, the glove didn't land anywhere there. So it's a low blow.
All right then. Anyway, on to my favourite topic. Crusher Ben. Crusher fights in 24 days. Crusher's fighting in 24 days, according to Eddie Hills, the 6-0 Iceman from Billericay, or by way of. What do you think to that, Kent?
I'll tell you what. I watched Big Malk and Nigel. Knock off Nigel on their video the other day there. And I actually enjoyed it. I actually really enjoyed it. I don't mind Spencer. I think he's boxing. He's very passionate about it. He comes across really well at times. And you could see it was just an aura of knock off Nigel. But they keep going back. Eddie Hills, Nigel, Connor, they all come back to that old narrative, that old story about when Nigel went to America and won the WBO title.
From Doug
DeWitt.
Nobody even regarded it as a belt then. It's just like winning WBF now, isn't it?
Yes.
Nobody even counts a WBO now anyway, even now.
So he won the WBO belt, okay, and the board didn't recognize it as a world title. So he ripped up the board license, okay. Put all that aside. So who, right? So you look at you look now. Robert Smith was an active professional boxer back then. Am I right?
Roberto, yeah, you are, yeah.
He was an active boxer. He actually fought Lloyd Hunnigan. For those who don't know that, he fought Lloyd Hunnigan.
He got flogged.
He got flogged, yeah. The ragamuffin
Team
man.
Lloyd Hunnigan.
And if anybody doesn't know who Lloyd Hunnigan is in this channel, go back and watch him against Donald Curry way back. Fantastic fight, fantastic performance. So he was an active pro right then. He wouldn't have cared about all that. He wasn't on the British Boxing Board of Control then. Who was the board run by back then? Back in...
Might have been John Morris or...
Charlie Giles.
John Morris wasn't either man. I don't know. Listen, all they are is a load of old boys. It's an old boy club. That's all they are. They don't mean no to me. You know all they do then. They're shit and they leave stains. And you've got to get rid of stains. They are, aren't they? That's they've had their hand in cookie jar all these years, taking and taking and taking. That's what they've been doing until somebody texts them. That's what they need doing. There needs to be a big investigation into that shower. Let me tell you, shower.
I used to be so gullible, right, Russell? I used to be so gullible back.
You used to be one of them at shows, Kent, didn't you? Sat next to him talking, didn't you?
I actually thought, Russell, this is how stupid I'm gonna
Don't
get
say
rinsed
it,
for this.
Kent. Don't say it. You give.
I'm gonna get rinsed in the comment section. I don't give a shit. I'm gonna get rinsed anyway.
I can't say it.
I actually thought way back, this is how stupid I was. I actually thought they were volunteers.
You're free. Kent, you're a weirdo.
Also, yeah, and I'll say that's how stupid and
I thought them who run amateur shows were, but you're not hires. All you who work at amateur shows, you don't do it for free, do you? The trainers do, but you lot don't, do you? You got these big fat 20-stone women, right, sitting at these amateur shows as judges and taking money out of amateur game. Yeah, you lot at amateur shows, all you big fatties taking money out at show, making out you love boxing. You're there for that. Disgusting.
So going back to what I was saying. So at that time, the British Boxing Board of Control was run by a different person. It's probably been 2 or 3 heads of the Board of Control from that. It's a different, probably a completely different board with the same mentality and the same agenda. So after that there, Ben actually took out his license again. And he fought in Britain again.
Yeah, they put it in bin though, didn't they? They ripped it up, didn't they? Board of Control one, didn't they? Him and Ambrose Mendy. And then they went grovelling back, didn't they? Grovellers.
So they went back, he got his license back again, and he fought in Britain, multiple times, and probably in double figures. So why they come back and using that as an excuse over and over and over again when he went back to the board after that?
Do you know why he came back to Britain? Because there were an offer on the table to fight Chris Eubank at Birmingham. It was a Sunday night, that fight. That's a true story. That's why they came back. Nigel Benn, you came back for pound notes. Grovelled. Man in the mirror moment. These people that sell the souls. He went out there and did all that good work in America. He did Barkley, Doug DeWitt. I'll tell you what his hardest fight. Sanderline Williams. That was his hardest fight.
Really good fight.
That was his hardest fight. You ask James Toney, who was his hardest fight? And he'll say Sanderline Williams at middleweight. What? He was a Darnell Boone. You know him who dropped Andre Ward, Darnell Boone?
Yeah.
He was one of them, him. Sanderline Williams, a tough old mofo, let me tell you. And that is one of Nigel Benn's best wins, Sanderline Williams. And to be fair to him, we did go out there with Ambrose Mendy. They went out there and he did well. And I would team Nigel Benn out, VHS video and lot. Black pack or whatever at track. He had all that on, didn't them coats, him and Ambrose Mendy. I was behind him. Every day he beat newspapers. He was big news. He was knocking men out. 22-0, 22 by way of at one point, wasn't he? Or something like that.
I've actually got that CD. I've actually got that CD.
You were knocking everybody out at one point, Nigel Benn, until he fought Michael Watson. Then he went out to America to regroup, didn't he? Yeah. Listen, we had to give him credit, but let's have it right. They came back for pound notes. After everything they said, once they realised they had nowhere to go, oh, Ambrose, we need to go back to the UK. Can you imagine them like that? Oh, God, we've got to go back and grovel. We've got to go back and grovel. The grovelinators. That's what they're going to have to do now with this drug thing. They're going to have to go cap in hand. And we've got some breaking news on that tonight with Julian. So tune in at 11 o'clock tonight for a 2-parter. Pop, pop, bang.
I think what you said there is completely right. You know, you go back and you look at our part one there, and you talk about Daniel Dubois needs responsibility, go out in America. When Ben went out there, he was getting top world class sparring.
Sparring Duran. He was sparring Duran.
Yeah. Well, that video of him sparring Duran was in London, so it was. Duran was over doing like a meet and greet type thing, but he was getting world class sparring. You could walk into any gym back then, and he would have got world class sparring daily. And he come back a better fighter after the Watson fight. You know, the Watson fight. There's that infamous, interview where he said that he spent most of the day in the hairdressers getting his hair braided. Remember, he was getting his hair was braided in that fight, and it was too tight. And Watson was
didn't he have a ponytail or something on his head at back or something? Ponytails were in fashion then, weren't they? Because Rodney Trotter had one in Only Fools and Horses. Do you remember?
Absolutely. What a iconic. I was actually thinking that as you said that. You stole that from me there. But you go back and you watch that fight, and he said he had his hair braided, and the day of the fight he was in like 6 hours.
Stretched all his face. Well, that's his excuse anyway. Pop, pop, bang.
Michael Watson fairly stretched his face. You know, he jabbed his head off. So I think Chris Eubank was probably the best thing that happened to Nigel Benn's career, because that meant at that time in America, he would have had to fight the likes of Michael Nunn. I don't think he would have beat him. I don't think he would have beat James Toney. I don't think he would have beaten Mike McCallum. I don't think he would have beat an aging Tommy Hearns or an aging Sugar Ray Leonard.
Yeah. Can I just say a big birthday shout out to my very good friend of mine, Frank Smith from Bury. Him and Peter got 10 year apiece, didn't they? He's 78 today, Frank.
Wow.
He's just beat cancer as well, and he lost his wife in COVID, and they won't even let him into hospital to see her for a few weeks. How bad's that? So, Frank, sorry I can't be there with you today, mate. Have a good time in south of France with Peter on that boat. I hope you're all right, mate. And I'll come and see you soon.
Legend.
78, legend.
Legend. Absolute legend.
He got arrested. He went like that. No comment.
Legend of a man.
He said, get effed to old Bill. Took his 10.
He's a legend.
Took a 10 on chin. Yeah, he's a proper. I'll tell you a little story about Frank. When they got locked up, him and Peter. Peter won't mind me telling this story. Peter had never been at Nick, so they've got up in the morning, and Peter's woke up like, oh, where are we here? Put covers over his head. Frank were already up. He's gone, here, Peter, come on. I've straightened the geezer out here. We've got some cornflakes and some boiled eggs. and some boiled eggs coming. Peter must have been thinking, boiled eggs? Oh, where are we here? But Frank just got on with it, never moaned all the way through it. Took it on chin like a proper trooper, and he's a proper legendary bloke. Love you, Frank. Happy birthday.
Happy birthday, Frank.
Happy, he's 78, I think he is. And he's still going strong. So, well, getting back to what you were saying there, Ken, go on.
I just think, as I said there, I think Nigel Benn, in America at that time, they looked at the money they were going to get for fighting the likes of James Toney, Michael Nunn, Mike McCallum, all them fighters in America. Even Steve Collins at that time, an aging Tommy Hearns, an aging Sugar Ray Leonard, an aging Roberto Duran. I don't think Nigel Benn at that stage of his career would have beaten any of them ones.
There was Steve Collins with Petronellis at that time.
He was.
Yeah. And that probably brought him on. Do you think?
Absolutely. You look at at that time he went over there, and Goody and Petronelli actually gave him a job, same type of job that Marvin Hagler had when they looked after him. He was in construction, he was building, he went
over on. Did Collins go over on boat?
He did. He went over in a bag, a kit bag, and he went over there as a.
You've got to give him credit, aren't you, Steve Collins, for that?
And he said he was over there. He had no visa. He was actually a legal immigrant living and training there. And look what it did for his career. He was a really, really good fighter. He came back and cleaned out, the super middleweights at that time who were older. Obviously sparring hundreds of rounds with Marvin Hagler. How could that not be good for your career?
Fantastic, wasn't it? Sparring with somebody like Hagler, man. You'd pay to spar with him, wouldn't you? Marvin Hagler, bless him. May
The greatest.
Rest in peace.
The
One
greatest.
of the greatest middleweights ever. Him and Monzon. Oh, could you imagine them? What would they do to this shower now? Him and Carlos Monzon. Oh,
Monson was an absolute monster. Monster. He was a monster. So he was a terrible person outside of the ring in boxing, but in the ring he was just an absolute. Who do you put higher? Do you put Monzon ahead of Hagler?
It's a coin toss, isn't it? Really. You know what spoils it for me with Hagler? When he got ripped against Ray Leonard, because Ray Leonard were Ray Leonard. Ray Leonard were Ray Leonard. It was a bit like Ken Norton against Ali. Ali got 2 decisions and Ken Norton got 1, but Ali got them 2 because he were Ali, didn't he? Really, you know what I mean, kind of thing. So I think it's a coin toss. They were both that good. But listen, John McGarvey gave Hagler nightmares. John McGarvey, WBC light middle champion, who was stepping up to middle, wanted to fight Hagler. He gave Marvin Hagler nightmares, John McGarvey. Nightmares, mate, I swear to God. So maybe Hagler were over ill then, I don't know. But look how many fights Hagler had, and look how many he had before he eventually was world champion. He had like 50-odd fights, didn't he? Before he went champion.
And he was away as an away fighter most of the time, and it got to a stage where he had to go to court. And threaten them with legal action. That why am I not getting a shot?
Mick Hennessy did. Mick Hennessy did with Howard Eastman for Hopkins. Do you know what I mean?
Great fighter.
Howard Eastman would be a world champion today. Listen, he brought Carl Froch on, him and Howard Eastman. And Carl Froch was his chief sparring partner for Hopkins fight when he just turned pro and that. But let me ask you something about this, Kent, because you're more knowledgeable on stuff like that. I'd ask Terry if he weren't so busy. He's busy now. He can't come on. Too busy. But I'm going to ask you this: inside fighting. Who fights on the inside or in the pocket, like they do in America? From the UK. Tell me a UK fighter that's an inside fighter in the pocket, that kind of thing. Where is this inside fighting? Who teaches it? Who?
You go back
all these padmen doing this and doing that, like Mr. T. Why don't you teach Yard how to fight in the pocket or some inside fighting? Like go and watch James Toney. Big Mount's got enough videos and goes on about James Toney, Archie Moore, and all that. Why can't some of these UK coaches teach these UK kids to fight like your Archie Moore, with shoulder roll, or inside fighting, or Pernell Whitaker? Why can't some of our guys replicate some of these styles that from a bygone era? Well, why not?
I tell you what, you look at fighters, and you look at Howard Eastman was a prime example of a fighter who they would say now inside fighting doesn't suit him because he's so long levers. Yeah. You look at Howard Eastman's inside fighting ability, his combination punching, he controls the distance so well. And what I mean by controlling the distance, a lot of fighters steam forward and they're actually spoiling their own work because they've no room to get the leverage their shots off inside. It's a skill to even be able to do that. And you look at Atlantic City, it was on the Hasim Rockman Lennox Lewis rematch part 2. Go back and watch Howard Eastman against William Joppy. What a fight.
I thought Howard Eastman did very, very well in that fight, mate, you know.
I thought I scored it to Howard by 1 round. He dropped Joppy in the 12th round, right at the end. And I think it was with Howard, sometimes he could be a wee bit one-paced at times. I think in hindsight, come back and watching it, I've watched that fight probably 10 times.
Yeah.
And you always say, if you can start around 7 and 8, because you can see that his body attack, his inside fighting, you watch how he pivots around the fighter to get his second phase off. That is real inside fighting. And another fight, if you want to look at it, Mike McCallum against James Toney 1. Watch that fight. That is one of the best fights I have ever seen. And you talk about inside fighting, watch that fight. It is absolute. It'll blow your mind, honestly. Watch those two fights. And if anybody in the comment section watches those two fights, tell me somebody right now in the UK that has that ability in inside fighting.
Yeah, I remember Froch telling me when he sparred Howard Eastman, who just turned pro. Mick Hennessy says, McCracken, obviously, McCracken lost against Howard Eastman and then ended up training him for a fight, didn't he? How crazy is that?
Well, that was a triple crown. That was a British Commonwealth,
European one,
and European, and it was actually on BBC at the time. Yeah. It was a really, really good fight. Howard Eastman is probably one of my favorite fighters.
He never gets the coolest, but Froch said to me, he thought, I'll spar him, he's a middleweight. But when they actually were weighted, he were a couple of pounds heavier than Carl, and Carl was super middle. And I said, what were it like? And he said he didn't like it. He said he didn't like sparring, but it had to be done. He said, but it brought him on.
That was the perfect, education for Carl Froch.
Hundreds and hundreds around.
Howard Eastman was world class, and I'll leave it in this here. I've read a lot of articles on when Steve Collins has multiple excuses about why he retired. Multiple, but I read a story that he had signed to fight Calzaghe, the Calzaghe Collins fight. The both of them were with Sports Network at the time, which was Frank Warren's old company.
Yeah. And
he was sparring Howard Eastman, and Howard Eastman knocked him out in sparring. And he was like, you know what? It's time. I've never been dropped in my life in sparring. Never been knocked out. I've been knocked out by Howard Eastman. And that was one of the stories why he retired from boxing. Yeah. Howard Eastman couldn't get sparring at one stage because he was just knocking everybody out. Brilliant fighter.
Yeah. And people say, why did Carl Froch end up with a career he had? Well, when he turned pro, he just wanted to test himself, didn't he? He might not have liked it. But that's why Carl always had hard fights, because he didn't want to waste the camp. He looked at it as like, why do I need to do a 2 week on my own, 12 week with McCracken, and then just to knock a waste man over? You're there to get everything, to wring everything out of your career that you can. A bit like Scott Quigg, he got everything out of his career that he could get out of it, and Carl did. But sparring the top guys at a young age is what brings you on. Is Daniel Dubois start sparring the top guys? Makes you wonder, doesn't it?
You look at that gym at that time, but that McCracken had a fantastic camp at that time. He had Matthew Thurwell, he had Lee Meagher, he had Dave Walker.
He
had
knocked Big Malk out.
And a great fight. To
be fair to Big Malk, he won a good fight, wasn't it?
Fantastic, and it was for a Southern Area title.
Yeah, it was. Yeah.
So you look at that camp back then, that was a massive. He could have had, I know those guys weren't world class, but they were all very, very, very good, capable domestic fighters. He could have had any top class sparring in any time Clark Froch back then. They were all really good fighters, really good.
Yeah, they were. Kent, I'm gonna ask you something now. I want you to tell me, because this is a question that Andy Patterson will be watching this. Who was your favourite lightweight of all time?
It's not it's an easy question. It's, for me, you go back, it's the greatest lightweight of all time.
Go and say it. Duran.
Roberto Duran. Yeah.
Oh, Andy Patterson's your new best friend.
Roberto Duran back then.
Somebody was saying Mayweather to me over there. He only had a couple of fights at lightweight and moved up, didn't he? To like welter.
Roberto Duran back then as a lightweight was a monster, and I mean
freak. You were a freak, wasn't he?
A monster, a monster fighter. You know, you look at Duran's career. For me, like I always say, Hagler's my favorite fighter of all time. I always say that. Then I say the greatest fighter of all time is Roberto Duran. And the reason I say that is, you look at what he did at lightweight.
Oh yeah.
At lightweight, then look what he did to Leonard. Then you bypass all that and you look at the trouble he gave Marvin Hagler. Look at that fight against Marvin
Hagler. Fought Barkley, didn't he?
Barkley, Davy Moore, all those guys. He fought everyone, and his natural weight, his best days were at lightweight, and he was beating up these super middle, technically middleweights, light middleweights, welterweights. Absolutely, for me, Roberto Duran. And people turn around and say, "Oh, look, he lost multiple times, and he lost to Kirkland Lang, and he lost to this, and he lost to that." Listen, you look at his great moments in boxing, and you look at the devastation he ran through the lightweight division. For me, he's the greatest lightweight of all time by a mile. Nobody comes close.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Chris Burns from Lancashire's just sent me some. I think he's Chorley. Chris, how you doing, Chris? He used to come on regularly. Remember him, that young kid?
Yeah, Chris. Yeah.
He's got a bird now, so he's under the thumb. He's just sent me some, and I was saying there's some intense beef between Fat Dan Rayfield and Bricktop. Apparently, he's been going on about waistline or something, and then Bricktop turned around and said, "Well, what would he know about waistlines?"
Seen it last night. Seen it. Brilliant. Do you know what? I'll say you can't beat Rogue Frank Warren, so you can't. It's hilarious.
He box office, Frank, isn't he? Frank Warren's box office. I've got a soft spot for him, but another time he cheeses me off. But he is boxing, isn't he? He is boxing.
He's lethal. You look at what he said. Just look at what he says about Frank Smith. He is absolutely brutal.
What is Frank Smith? All Frank Smith is, what happens in boxing, they have to have people to go do these deals and they need to sit in front of you. He just bounces him about and he just gets him to sign it. That's all. He's on it paper boy, isn't he? That's all I want for Dennis. He just bounces you about, oh, go sort that. That's it. Eddie ain't got time to do all that. All this CEO and all this nonsense, rising star. It's knackers, it's boxing. Get over yourself, you little gimp. Just because you're from money, he's from dough, innit? He's another millionaire's brat. Richie Rich, I call him. So we're out of time, Ken. And I'm not due this apple for another 55 minutes. Starving as well. Right. Oh, I've got cramps. Doing them sit-ups earlier. I've got right bad cramps in the stomach.
You're an athlete, Russell.
I don't know about that, Ken, but I like to take care of myself. I'm in good shape, Ken. Stripped
Sorry.
off, aesthetically, I look all right.
Sorry, you're not an athlete until you get those silver shadows.
Hey, listen, I'm going to get them. John sent me some insteps, and I put them in them tennis shoes, but tennis shoes, you can't run in them. And I was looking for all my shoes today, and I thought, I haven't really got a proper pair of running trainers. I thought I had, but I haven't. They're mainly dress trainers, so I'm going to get them High-Tech Silver Shadows, because if they're good enough for John Rambo, They're good enough for Big P, aren't they? Okie dokie. Listen, Ken, it's been a pleasure having you on. I love you. I hope you're well, and I hope your mum's all right. Give her my best.
Peace out, Russell. Happy
Thanks.
birthday, Frank, you legend.
Happy birthday, Frank Smith. Pop, pop, bang. Cheers, pal.
All the best.